welcome back to another episode of State and Local. I'm Anne Marie Battistone, and you're watching Norfolk Public Access. My guest this time is another candidate for the May 3rd election. David Rosenberg is running for Moderator, and he's here with me today, so I'm very pleased to welcome David. You've always been so good to come on the show. Now, why don't you just go ahead and talk about your issue or your proposition?
Interest in running
yes,
for Moderator.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. So I've been concerned that the participation in Norfolk town meetings is not nearly as high as I think it should be, and also in Norfolk decision making. We have about 6,500 registered voters in Norfolk, and we're lucky if we get 200 attendees at town meetings. I'd like to see many more, and it is the goal of increasing participation that's is my strongest motivator. I've looked at what's happened in other jurisdictions. I've been reading books, I've been talking to people, and when I was running for town moderator 2 years ago, I solicited suggestions from the Norfolk voters about what we could do to increase voter participation, and what would make it more comfortable for them, what would move them to come to town meetings. After that election, which I lost, I decided to share the results not only with the winner, but with also all the officials and boards and committees in town, and
that makes sense.
All the residents of the town. So I have a website that I used for that campaign and is still up and is my website for this campaign. And on it, there's a page of comments and suggestions where I've listed all the ideas. Some of them are my own ideas, some of them are things I've gotten from observing other jurisdictions, some of them are things I've read, and a number of them are things that I've received as comments. People came up and talked to me while I was campaigning, people sent me emails, people phoned me with suggestions. Not all of the suggestions are really practical. Some of them were made by people who wanted things to be different but didn't understand the constraints under which we operate. And some of them were things I would describe as venting. As people were unhappy with the town government. I decided not to censor any of them, so put them all up even.
Oh, why not?
Yeah, I thought that town officials should be aware of the venting, understand what's bothering people.
I agree with you.
And I certainly did want to share it with people in a position to make some of these changes. So what can happen at town meeting is constrained by state law and town bylaw. We can't have amendments to motions that would violate the scope of an article, because then people would not have received notification of what's being discussed. And that raises the question, how can we make the process more participative at the town meeting in view of the legal constraints? And one idea, which seems to me like a good idea, is that in addition to having the formal town meeting that is subject to those legal constraints and at which action is taken, there could be other informal meetings prior to the town meeting where no action would be taken, and it was not a formal town meeting and therefore not subject to the constraints. And anybody could discuss whatever they chose to discuss, and in that venue we could discuss all the things going on in town, their relative priorities, the trade-offs that people were willing to make. For example, just hypothetically, is it worth having more library hours versus worth having more road maintenance or something? I'm not suggesting that's a really issue, but I'm saying just trade-offs between things. And
Now, would the moderator run those? Would that be your idea, that the moderator would run these smaller meetings?
So they would not be official meetings, and the moderator would not be running them in his official capacity. But I think that by announcing the meetings and by encouraging members of town committees and boards to come and express the views of their committees and boards, that the fact that the moderator was making the suggestion and perhaps acting as the informal facilitator would make the meeting carry more weight than if just me with no official office convene such a meeting. So articles can be on the warrant because they are proposed by town boards or committees or town officials. And there can also be citizen initiative petition articles on the warrant. And so after a discussion of the things that were important to people in town, there could be the potentially initiative petition articles that were petitioned for and then added to the warrant. So that would be a way of giving people in town more control of the process, even though at the town meeting itself, people were constrained to just voting on the articles that were on the warrant. I want to I want to make the town meetings more warm and welcoming environment, and one way to do that is to be there early and have sort of informal discussions, not talk just with the Board of Selectmen and just with the advisory committee, but be there to greet people, to talk to them about what their concerns are, and to make sure that everybody feels welcome.
Were you thinking of something, make like a little coffee maybe?
Maybe.
I know sometimes they have those, but it's afterwards.
Right. So I'm thinking of something that's done before. I know that in other towns, the moderator might come to the meeting a few hours early to have informal discussions during that time with anybody who wants to show up and ask about what's happening at the meeting, the issues about
the backstories.
Right, and it would be good for not only the moderator to be there for that, but also other town board and committee members to be there to involve town people in these informal discussions. So I'd also like to use online communication to get more information out.
You had something set up at one time, didn't you?
Right, so former town moderator Dan Winslow appointed me as chair of a town meeting technology committee.
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
then former moderator Cece Van Tine reappointed me after she became town moderator. And the charge of that committee was to think about how to use technology to make town meetings more effective. And that committee decided that the best way was to help people prepare for town meetings by giving them an opportunity to ask questions about articles on the warrant, to advocate in favor of or in opposition to the warrant articles, to ask about past practices, about practices in other jurisdictions, about interaction with state or federal law, so that people would have a better understanding and that a number of questions that might have been asked at the town meeting could have been asked and answered prior to the town meeting.
Oh, yes, right.
So that was what we tried to do, and we did have it set up, and it had maybe 100 or so people registered to use it. Sorry, let me say that it was world accessible. That is, anybody anywhere could read things, but in order to post to it, you had to be registered as a Norfolk user of this, and about 100 people registered to use it, but relatively few of those actually did post to it. I don't know how many people read it. I hope lots, but I know that it was just a small number of people who actually posted to it. But yeah, that was one idea that the Town Meeting Technology Committee had to help town meetings go more efficiently by. I mean, right now, if somebody asks a question on the floor of the town meeting, maybe somebody there knows the answer, maybe nobody knows the answer. Maybe somebody offers a speculation of an answer, but they're not sure and there's no opportunity to do research. One of the advantages of this was that people could ask questions and there would be time to check out those questions, answer them, and if the person asking the question was distrustful of the answer in some way or thought the answer was incomplete, there'd be time to do additional research prior to the town meeting. Another reason why that kind of thing could be useful is that sometimes at the town meeting, an article will be proposed in wording that falls under the scope of the article, but is different than the scope of than the wording of the article. So you'll get the warrant, you'll read the article, and then a motion is made that is deemed to fall under the scope of the article, but is worded quite differently sometimes. And I always thought it would be good to know in advance of the town meeting if the body that was proposing the motion was going to make a motion.
You mean to amend it? To amend the question?
No, I mean an initial motion. So often the initial motion is made by a member of the advisory committee, and the advisory committee sometimes makes motions in wording different than what's in the article. And then, of course, it could be amended to be still different than that. But if there is knowledge in advance of the town meeting that the motion is going to be made that is different, with different wording than is in the printed warrant, it would be useful to know.
Now, why would that happen? Why would such a thing happen? I mean, because the advisory board knows what's in that warrant, and they get up and they sort of present it. Why would it be worded?
Right. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but just briefly.
Yes.
Sometimes they learn new things between the time the warrant was printed and the town meeting.
Yes.
Sometimes they receive opinions from town council that it would be better if you did it this way.
Right.
So it's not on whimsy that they change it. They change it for valid reasons. Often an article is phrased very generally, and then the motion that is made is sometimes much more specific than the general wording of the article. I think that every person's voice matters, and I think that I want to do everything possible to include the voice of all Norfolk residents in town decision making and in the decision making that happens at the town meeting. And therefore, I would like to invite everybody in Norfolk to, first of all, read the suggestions that I've received so far, and then let me know what their suggestions are.
Those addresses are going to be on the video for you.
I hope so.
Oh yeah. You don't need to tell. Yeah, because it'll be there on the bottom third.
You don't want me to say it.
Well, I just say you have more important
I want to say
talk.
it.
Oh, we're going.
So the URL for the website that I have is https:// sorry, I got that wrong. Maybe I shouldn't have said it. https:// sites.google.com/site/Rosenberg for moderator. That's Rosenberg, Rosenberg, the digit 4, and then the word moderator. And there's a page there on comments and suggestions. There's also a link there to send email to me. And if people want to send suggestions to me by email, they can send email to Rosenberg, that's Rosenberg, at ACM, that's as in ablecharliemary.org. So Rosenberg at acm.org. And it would be helpful if those messages had as their subject Norfolk civic engagement, so that I can help separate those messages from other messages in which I'm drowning. So I think that making town meeting more participative requires certainly the being more welcoming at the town meeting. I also would like to have a meeting maybe very shortly before the town meeting where I explain how the procedures work and what people would do if they want to make an amendment to a motion, and what the constraints on amendments are. So I want people to be better informed, and then, as I said earlier, I think that in order to help people, I'd like the town to engage in a general discussion about what's going on in town, what our relative priorities are, what trade-offs we're willing to make, and that would have to be well before the town meeting so that the results of that could be reflected in articles that appear on the warrant.
Well, it's certainly true. There are people that complain and complain, and then they don't call town hall to ask questions. They certainly don't go to the meeting. And it's, I guess they take some pleasure in complaining, but don't want to actually go in and, get the answers that they're or have some resolve of the answers of the issues that they've been, complaining about.
Yeah, so neither I nor anybody else is capable of allowing people to participate without them spending the time to participate. If people want to participate, and I hope they do, and I hope I can make it attractive for them to participate, and that they'll see that they're getting value from their participation. But it does require spending some time to participate. There isn't a magic way to avoid that. As I mentioned, some of the suggestions I received were sort of venting from people who are unhappy. It's good to know what they're unhappy about so that we can see if that can be addressed. But
now, what do you feel the role of the live broadcast would be? Did you think that would be helpful, or in other words, people would have their, they'd have their copy at home that's sent to them, and then they can watch on Norfolk, on NCTV, and then I suppose get in their car and come. Do you feel like is it a help or a hindrance, do you think? It discourages people from coming in that they can see the live broadcast, or do you think it might help people because they might say, gee, this is coming up, and
I think
I'm going to run over there. And
yeah, I suspect that would be helpful, but again, that's an issue where I'd prefer not to be making the decisions on behalf of the citizens of Norfolk. I'd like to solicit input and see what the voters think, whether they think that would be helpful or not. And if voters, if NCTV is capable of doing that.
We do have a live broadcast. I'm pretty sure it's live.
The last time I knew that wasn't possible from the middle school.
Maybe you're right.
But my recollection is that at the middle school they were recording it for later playback.
Oh, okay.
But
I may be thinking of, okay.
But it's also, I haven't been close to NCTV recently, so maybe that
I should probably know that.
Now have facilities that weren't possible.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah, so I'd like people to help by telling me how they want to be engaged, and if they think that being able to watch it live would be useful, and if NCTV is capable of doing that, then I would encourage that.
If we were, we would be doing that. That's for sure. I'm just, I'm getting this mixed up with Medfield, where it was live, and it was. That's why I'm sorry, even though it's been so many years. Now we've got about 10 minutes, a little less than 10 minutes. Was there any other aspect that I might bring up about, being the moderator beyond, this concern or this issue for you that you think is?
Well, in fairness to the current moderator, I think he's doing a good job of moderating the meetings. My primary concern is not that I want to be moderator because I'm going to do a better job than him. I think I also would do a good job, but there's nothing wrong with the job he's doing. I think that my main goal is, even though I offered all the suggestions I had received and offered to work on increasing participation, nothing much seemed to happen. And I think that in order to make that more happen, I need to take the lead myself. So I need to step up and say, okay, I'll do it, and Norfolk won't lose with respect to a moderator, no matter who wins. Jay can do it fine. I believe I can do it fine.
Right.
And the question is, in addition to running the meetings, what else can we do to involve more people? And as I've described, there are a number of ideas that I've received, some ideas I've had that I'd like to implement. Sort of recapping, I think that democracy should not be a spectator sport, that all citizens should participate, and that every citizen's voice matters. I would like to make it as easy as possible for everybody to participate, and I'd like people to vote for more civic engagement by electing me town moderator.
I think that idea of having something ahead of time, do you think it would, if maybe it was like a coffee hour or even a little supper or something, if that could be organized? Do you think that would, and then, people would, it wouldn't help for people that are at home cooking, but to have people come in and say, well, there'd be this little social hour and I can talk about these issues. I thought that sounded like a pretty good idea.
So you may remember that when Dan Winslow was town moderator, one of the things he did is he rearranged a spaghetti dinner to get people to come. So I think that was useful to get people to come.
Did people go to that? Or?
They went to it. Some of them didn't stay for the town meeting. They came for dinner and then left. But I don't think that was really a good venue for discussing things. People there,
that's true,
talked about sports or the quality of the spaghetti or
right, exactly.
What was happening with their kids. And I think that I'd like to engage people in a discussion about town issues, not just have them eat supper. So,
I was just thinking in terms of an attraction, to come in. Now, we have 5 minutes, so let me ask you a question. We had talked a little bit earlier about the microphones, and right now there is not a yes or no, and there used to be a question mic. And would you keep it that way, or do you think it's good to have them separated?
Well, so let me first talk about what I believe was Dan's motivation in setting up yes or no microphones. I think that he wanted to be sure that on any issue being discussed, there was an equal opportunity for people on both sides of the issue to discuss it. And if people all lined up at a microphone or at even multiple microphones, but there was no distinction between them, then there might be 6 people, all of whom spoke in one side of an issue,
yes.
and then followed by another 6 people, all of whom spoke again on the same side of the issue, and no opportunity to get anybody on the other side. In fact, sometimes
that makes sense.
Sometimes that's done in the sense that a group that is really advocating with an issue will, in fact, have all the members of the group line up so that
I've seen that. Yes.
So I think what he was trying to do was separate.
This way he would know.
Right, separate so he could call on people on both sides equally, and then C.C. Van Tyne added a question microphone because there were some people who asked questions about articles, weren't speaking in favor or against the article, but just wanted to know more. And her idea was, I believe, was that this shouldn't count against the yes people or the no people. It should be
I think that makes sense.
So I fully support the idea that there should be equal time for both sides, and that questions should not count against either side. I'm not sure whether I'd do it with a microphone or not, with labeling the microphones. I mean, some people think that was a good idea, some people don't. I think the objective of giving equal time to both sides is important. I guess another thing that I'd like to mention, if we have
a few minutes, yes,
is that in addition to running for town moderator, I'm currently a member of the board of registrars of voters,
oh, yes,
from which I would have to resign if I was elected
right,
moderator. I've also, a number of years ago,
oh, yes,
been a member of a computer study committee when Norfolk had a computer study committee. And prior to moving, I've lived in Norfolk for almost 38 years.
oh my,
but
good Lord.
Prior to living in Norfolk, I lived in Maynard, Massachusetts, and in Maynard I was a member of the bylaw committee of Maynard. I've also, I'm really a computer geek. I mean, I'm currently retired. I had worked for a number of computer vendors and computer users, and most recently at MIT. So my retirement was from MIT. But I'm interested in mediation, and I've been trained as a mediator.
Oh.
And I think that it's very important for the moderator,
yes,
to be neutral, to deal with the facilitating the proceedings, but not have any position on the substance of any of the issues. And I think that my training as a mediator will help me establish the neutrality which is necessary.
I think so, yes.
I also think my background in computer programming is compatible with my interest in solving problems. I consider myself creative in coming up with solutions, and experienced at solving problems, and from the mediation work, building consensus. I think those are skills that will be useful to me as
And
moderator.
in addition, whether it's relevant, and I think a lot of people around town always think of you as a very kind person, a very nice person.
Well, thank you. It's always complimentary to hear that.
Well, you know, we've run out of time, so listen, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Yep.
I appreciate the opportunity.
And thank you for watching this episode this edition of State and Local. I'm Anne Marie Battistone. The election is May 3rd, and we do have a couple more candidates, so please keep watching for those shows. Thank you for watching today. Bye-bye.